We're starting off the list with Hotel Monte Vista in Flagstaff, Arizona. There is some disturbing stuff going on at this place, at least that's what I've read. This place is teeming with former guests who checked into the hotel and never left, having met gruesome ends. Their spirits are now lingering within the establishment. One ghost, or in this case a pair of ghosts, are two women who were thrown from the 3rd floor back in the day and now spend their time as ghosts attempting to strangle male guests in their sleep. One long-term guest in the early 80s had a strange hobby of hanging meat from the chandelier in his room. One day he was found dead in his room. That room is 220, and guests and staff report strange activity going on in the room. Some staff just veer clear of it completely. The TV is known to turn on its own. This even continued after the TV was replaced, and some report the feeling of being touched by a cold, unseen hand. Number 9, the Hotel del Salto. This Colombian hotel was first erected in 1923 and has quite the reputation. That's why it has its dark nickname, which I can't really say the name of here, but suffice to say, a good number of people have died here. This place is absolutely gorgeous, overlooking the Tequendama waterfalls, but legend has it that in order to prevent being captured by Spanish conquistadors, the natives of the area would jump from these very cliffs. During the hotel's operation, a good number of people took their lives there or would fall by mistake, and this picturesque building became steeped in sadness and despair. The building still stands today, now having been transformed into a museum, but some still say not to go near the property at night, as countless lost souls still roam the grounds. At number 8, we have the Hotel del Coronado. This beautiful San Diego hotel is known to have had some pretty famous guests like President Ronald Reagan and Katharine Hepburn, just to name a couple. But there's also one ghost who checked in and has never left. Her name is Kate Morgan, and she's been haunting the hotel since her death in 1892. Kate Morgan had checked into the hotel and spent a few days there before taking her own life. She'd had stomach cancer and was waiting for her brother, who was a doctor, to arrive and assist her with her illness, but he didn't show up, and she hadn't received any letters. Her spirit is said to roam the property to this day, still waiting for her brother to finally arrive, especially on the 3rd floor. Her room is frequently requested by paranormal enthusiasts. There's another ghost supposedly said to haunt the hotel though, an actress by the name of Isadore Rush, who drowned by the beach in 1904. Staff have reported seeing the lights turn on and off in her room that she'd been staying in, even when the room is empty. Course. Next we have the Mermaid Inn in East Sussex. This historical building was built at some time in the 12th or 13th centuries. With a building that old, it's no surprise people say it's haunted. Gotta say, it'd be pretty incredible to stay in a place like this. This place has quite the history. It was originally frequented mostly by medieval sailors. From 1420 to 1770, it was a bar and an inn which was frequently visited by the Hawkhurst Gang, a group of privateers who terrorized the area. The Mermaid Inn saw a number of deaths at the hands of these criminals over the years, some of which had been attempting to snitch on them. One of the leaders, Thomas Kingsmill, who was executed in 1749 for his crimes, is said to haunt the inn till this very day. The inn was eventually reopened in 1993, and guests have reported seeing a ghostly figure of a woman in white standing at the front of their bed when they wake up. There's also the spirit of a maid who died at the hands of a smuggler in room 5, which has been reportedly haunted well before the modern era. And of course you have Thomas Kingsmill himself, who supposedly haunts a rocking chair in room 17. At number 6, we have the Mizpah Hotel in Nevada. This hotel opened in 1904 and was one of the first luxury hotels built in the state. It's a really nice looking hotel with Victorian era decor. I imagine it looks almost exactly as it did in the 1900s. As luxurious as this place is though, there's a dark piece of history that still lingers within the walls of the building to this day, and that is the death of a guest whose name has been lost to time but is known simply as the Red Lady. The Red Lady was believed to have lived at the hotel, providing a specific service for male clientele, the oldest trade in the world. The story goes that one of her clients saw her with another man and in a fit of jealous rage took her life. In some versions of the tale, she was strangled, in others she fell to her death from the 5th floor. But no matter what version you hear, it all ends the same way, with her spirit lingering within the hotel. Men will sometimes hear her disembodied voice whispering sweet things in their ears. Some have reported finding a pearl from her broken necklace under their pillows. You know what, that doesn't sound bad actually. I'll take a pearl and a seductive whisper, why not? Number 5, the Omni Grove Park Inn. You can find this lovely historic hotel in Asheville, North Carolina. For years, however, guests and staff alike have reported feeling the presence of a spirit simply known as the Pink Lady. The Pink Lady was a former guest at the hotel who unfortunately never left. She's often described simply as a pinkish, smoky haze, but will sometimes take on the form of a young woman in a pink ball gown. The story goes that the woman was the mistress of a married man and was staying in room 545, the room she's said to still haunt to this very day. She met her end falling from the 5th floor balcony to the 3rd. In some stories she was thrown, in others she jumped herself, but the Pink Lady sounds like a pretty fun ghost, to be honest. Some report their room being rearranged at night, lights turning on and off by themselves, and some have even woken up in the middle of the night with their feet being tickled. Never heard of a ghost doing that before, but I appreciate the creativity. Next up is the Emily Morgan Hotel in San Antonio, Texas. It's pretty obvious why this hotel is so supposedly haunted. From 1924 to 1976, the building was a hospital, complete with a morgue and crematorium. It didn't become a hotel until 1984. Staff and guests have reported all sorts of strange phenomena going on here. You have your more standard ghost stuff, of course. Maids will clean a room only to come out of the bathroom to see pillows tossed onto the floor, doors opening and closing on their own. I'm sure people hear things. Sometimes the elevators will randomly stop at various floors for no reason. Some guests have said they've heard the phone in their room ring and then they've gone to pick it up. There's no one on the other end of the line. One story goes that a guest had returned to her room after dinner to find that her bathtub had been filled with blue water. Now that could be an outright lie, or a staff member just went into her room and had a bath while she was out. But there are a lot of other strange things that go on here. The creepiest reports are those related to the lingering spirits who met their end as hospital patients. Some claim to hear the sound of a hospital cart being wheeled down the hallway. The smell of antiseptic often wafts throughout the 14th floor, especially. There are also shadowy figures said to move across the walls with no visible source. Number 3, the Ancient Ram Inn. Now, unfortunately, you can't actually stay in this place now. The owner uses it as their home. Man, I'd love to get a room here. The place was built all the way back in 1145. That probably isn't super exciting for the Europeans in the audience or like anyone really outside of North America, but I don't think I've ever stepped foot in a place that old. Anyway, you can only imagine how much history surrounds this building. This place was actually built on the grounds of a 5,000-year-old pagan burial site. Reports of strange occurrences, including ghostly apparitions and disembodied voices, have been reported, and as to what spirit or spirits these voices belong to, one of the most famous legends involves a witch who was supposedly burned at the stake on the property at some point in the 1500s. There are also legends of a number of tragic events, such as human sacrifices that are said to have taken place within its walls. And number 2, we have, of course, the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles has a notorious history marked by a series of incredibly grim events. It's become quite infamous for its association with criminal activity and unsettling paranormal occurrences. The 1940s saw the Cecil being linked to several unalivings, leading to its pretty blunt nickname. The hotel was also the temporary residence of the infamous Richard Ramirez during his horrific spree. One of the most well-known incidents in modern times was, of course, the case of Elisa Lam in 2013. Her mysterious death and that eerie elevator surveillance footage captured attention from everyone across the internet. And for all these reasons and more, many have claimed the building to be incredibly haunted. Reports of strange noises and ghostly sightings have been being claimed for decades. And lastly, we have the Langham Hotel in London, England, said to be one of the most haunted hotels in the country. The hotel was built in 1865, so a lot of guests have stayed at this place over the years, some of which have never left. There are said to be 5 primary ghosts that haunt this building. Some people apparently hear a baby crying at night. Well, I mean, I guess babies might stay at the hotel, but if it's just a disembodied baby voice, that's creepy. One primary ghost is that of a German prince who fell from his upper story window. Staff have reported seeing his ghostly figure moving through walls. His presence is also always accompanied by a drop in temperature. Room 333 is supposedly the most haunted room. One man, a BBC newscaster, woke up to see the ghostly figure of a man in Victoria-era evening wear. The figure hovered in the air. It had no legs. Classic ghost kind of look. The figure started floating towards the man with its arms out, as if it was going to grab him. In 2014, several English national team cricket players left the hotel in the middle of the night because of supposed paranormal activity going on in their rooms. They reported sudden, unexplained heat, their bathroom taps turned on by themselves, and they just had this uneasy feeling of a strange presence lurking in their rooms.
Starting us off at number 10 is Elms Hotel and Spa. Located in Missouri, some believe this hotel might just be the most haunted in the entire state. Originally built in 1888, just 10 years after its construction, the Elms Hotel was destroyed by a fire. It was a tragic event, but luckily no one lost their lives. But what's mysterious is that in 1910, the hotel went up in flames once more. Again, no one lost their lives, but this time, passersby noticed something. It appeared as though a spirit was walking around the embers, and rumors began circulating that somehow the mysterious entity had lit the flames. But just who exactly is this spooky arson demon, and why did they burn down the hotel? More importantly, if it was them, what made them stop? And it's not just fire maniac ghosts that haunt these halls. Another commonly seen apparition is that of a grieving woman who wanders the halls looking for her little one. But make no mistake, though she may be grieving, she is an angry entity. She'll pull at their hair or throw objects across the room while they are asleep to try and get your attention. Maybe she believes the guests are who took her little one from her, or maybe she is just angry to have visitors there. But either way, if I were you, I would not stay the night if you're looking for a peaceful sleep. Coming in at number 9, the Biltmore Hotel. Back in 1929, New York gangster Thomas "Fatty" Walsh was staying in the Everglades suite on the 13th floor of the Biltmore Hotel in Florida. Apparently, Fatty routinely stayed here and used the suite as a speakeasy and casino for him and his friends. However, after a heated argument over gambling debts, Fatty was shot by fellow mobster Edward Wilson and died right on the scene, and it appears he has never left. Once a player, still a player, the New York gangster is notorious for appearing only to women who he deems attractive and tricks them into visiting him on the 13th floor. One woman recounted her stay with her husband and said while in the elevator, all of a sudden, the doors opened on the 13th floor, despite that neither of them had requested that floor. They waited a moment and the doors wouldn't close, so the woman stepped out to see what was going on. As soon as she did, the doors slammed behind her on the elevator and it continued its journey to the lobby. The husband, worried for his wife, tried to reach the 13th floor but was unable, so he went back to their suite only to find his wife beside herself and outright spooked. She said when the doors shut behind her, she heard a maniacal laugh and the smell of cigar smoke. On top of Fatty's ghost, other entities are routinely seen walking through the walls, slamming doors, or watching you sleep. So it's a no for me. Coming in at number 8 is Hawthorne Hotel. While this entire Salem hotel is said to be haunted by several different entities, the rooms you really need to be afraid of are 612 and 325. Room 612 and the 6th floor in general is where the apparition of a woman is often seen roaming the halls, who many believe is the ghost of Bridget Bishop, the first woman executed during the witch trials. Accused of bewitching 5 other women, she died in 1692 and remains haunting the property, seeking revenge for her life taken too soon. Those that stay in this room report a strong smell of apples, which most think has to do with the fact that she owned an apple orchard on the land where the hotel was built in 1925. But of course, it is her frightening apparition that stares at you while you sleep that is really unsettling. As for room 325, it's believed the entities that haunt this room may have been past guests. No one is quite sure why they are there, but these entities are definitely frightening. Guests report lights turning on and off with no explanation, as well as water faucets doing the same within the room. While lying on the bed, guests have reported experiencing an extreme level of cold, with many saying with many reporting being grabbed or tugged at while trying to fall asleep. Plus, at night it's said the screams and cries of the past guests can be heard echoing in the room. But what's strange is it never seems to occur anywhere else in the building. Coming in at number 7, Fort Garry Hotel. Built in 1903, since its doors opened to the public, many famous figures have stayed overnight, including Queen Elizabeth II, King George VI, Louis Armstrong, even Liberace. But don't let the star-studded guest list ease your suspicions. This place is straight up frightening, especially room 202, where it said a woman took her own life by hanging in the closet. Those that have dared to stay in the haunted room claim they saw blood drip down the walls and that a terrifying woman wearing a cloak would appear out of nowhere, often hovering over the foot of the bed while you sleep at night. What's even scarier is that some say she will crawl into the bed with you and that you can feel her cold, ghostly frame wrap around you. But it's not just the room where you might run into the spooky ghoul. She's known to haunt the hotel lounge as well, where staff and guests alike claim to hear loud cries coming from the same corner. I mean, unless you're looking to literally cuddle up with a ghost, I would steer clear of this one. Coming in at number 6, the Fairmont Hotel. While many of us know Banff for the gorgeous, picturesque Rocky Mountains, the famous Fairmont Hotel also has a dark secret. Room 873. As the story goes, years and years ago, an entire family was killed in this very room. After a long investigation, the room was refurbished and went back into the usual cycle. But soon the hotel staff were receiving many disturbances about the room that sent their blood running cold. Guests said they would fall asleep only to be awoken by screams, and that when the lights turned off, bloody handprints would be found on the mirrors. Staff would rush to the room to investigate, but all seemed to have disappeared by the time they got there. Afraid of what lurked inside, the room was sealed shut and never to be entered again. And if you go there now, no trace of the room exists. There is only a long hallway where a door used to be, and if you knock along the wall, you'll hear a hollow noise where it's believed the room was once sealed up many years ago. But just because they've locked up this door doesn't mean the terrifying ghosts were trapped inside. It seems room 692 has taken over as the most haunted room in the joint, and the same kinds of frightening phenomena continue. And if that weren't enough, it's also reported the ghost of a bride is seen dancing in the ballroom. It said she tragically lost her life on her wedding day after tripping down the stairs, breaking her neck, and being set ablaze by nearby candles. Some guests claim to have witnessed her on fire walking through the halls, and who knows, she might just come and haunt you in room 692. Coming in at number 5, the Empress Hotel. Located in Victoria, British Columbia, the Empress Hotel is a decadent building known to be visited by some of the most elite of our society. But don't be fooled by its gorgeous exterior and extravagant decor. It just might be one of the most haunted hotels in all of Canada. There are many ghost stories told about this hotel, like the construction worker who was working during the 1960s and came across a shadowy figure hanging from the chandelier, only to discover a staff member had taken their life in that very room exactly 1 year prior. Guests also report an elderly woman in pajamas who'll knock at your door in the middle of the night asking for help finding her room, only to take you to the elevator and disappear right before your eyes. It's believed she was a ghost who haunted a room that has since been demolished due to the need for more elevators, hence her confusion and disappearance as soon as she steps foot into one. Others, like the building's architect and a young girl, haunt the building, but the most frightening spirit is the maid, Lizzie. Back in 1909, 1 year after the hotel's opening, Lizzie stepped out onto the hotel fire escape to say her rosary, as she did every night. But this time, unbeknownst to poor Lizzie, the contractor had disassembled the platform, and so Lizzie plummeted to her death from the 6th story. Guests who now stay anywhere on the 6th floor claim to have seen her walk through walls or hear her screams late at night, and believe she is out seeking revenge on the worker responsible for the end of her life. Coming in at number 4, Tubac Golf Resort and Spa. It's one thing to witness the sight of a ghost, but in my opinion, it's a whole other terror to be physically grabbed or moved by one. According to one hotel worker back in 2010, they ended up having to work late, so instead of going home, he just decided to stay the night in the Otero Ranch House. The ranch house had long been associated with ghostly apparitions and frightening tales, but the staff member was exhausted and it was the only room available, so he figured he would take his chances. When he got in, he decided to lay down on the couch and watch some TV for a bit before heading to bed, when suddenly he felt it move. move, and not just a little. According to the staff member, the entire couch lifted up off the floor, and with him in it, jerked several feet towards the TV. He was immediately freaked out, but before he could get up off the couch, the curtains that hung across the room from him lifted up and came down with a swoosh on top of him. Needless to say, he immediately bolted from the room and did not dare spend the rest of the night. Although he still works at the resort, he has never again stepped foot in the Otero Ranch and will choose sleeping in his car over ever staying a minute in the haunted room. Coming in at number 3, Hotel Provincial. Branded as one of the most haunted places in New Orleans, the Hotel Provincial is located in the infamously haunted French Quarter. Back in the day, there was a military hospital just down the street from the hotel, and one of the buildings used a medicinal herb garden for the hospital, which seems a little strange, but does make sense when you find out the kinds of spirits that haunt the halls. Today, the hotel consists of 5 buildings, and although ghosts are known to lurk in each, the most haunted building is believed to be number 5. Guests of building number 5 have reported seeing insane things, such as Confederate soldiers covered in blood, moaning from agonizing pain, who miraculously disappear once the lights turn on. Others have reported apparitions of surgeons in the halls, and maybe most disturbing is the amount of guests that have seen strange pools of blood appear on their bedding or the floor that disappear just as fast as they came into view. One guest even reported that as the elevator door opened on the hotel's 2nd floor, the hospital was entirely in view. So it seems as though the soldiers that died in the hospital down the street took a liking to the hotel and continued to haunt all the visitors who enter to this day. Coming in at number 2, Ottawa Jail Hostel. As you probably already figured out from the name, once upon a time this building was a jail. It opened its doors to the public in 1862 and quickly became the site of many public executions. On top of that, living conditions were harsh, with small, cold, and windowless cells that only had a small hole to allow for airflow. But things didn't start getting spooky until years later. After the building was converted into the hostel it is today, the parking lot was partially excavated to build a bridge, but to the construction workers' horror, the remains of 140 bodies were uncovered on the ground, and it's believed that all 140 bodies were prisoners who lost their life to execution. The most famous inmate was Patrick James Whelan, a man who up until his last breath pleaded he was not guilty of his convicted crime. What's worse is that he was told his body would be transported back to Montreal after his execution, but this promise was not kept, and they laid him to rest on the prison grounds. Angry and out for revenge, many guests say they have seen him or even been the victim of his wrath during their stay. One guest in particular, who made it very clear that she didn't even believe in ghosts prior to her stay, said at 1 o'clock in the morning she was woken by someone grabbing her arm and trying to pull her out of the bed. Her friend, who was across the room from her, woke when the girl screamed, "Let me go," into the darkness, and the two were both so frightened they couldn't fall back asleep. And last up, in our number 1 spot, La Pavilion Hotel. Just minutes away from the notorious French Quarter lies the luxurious Pavilion Hotel. But despite its lavish exterior, it is believed to be the home to over 100 spirits. And some paranormal investigators even believe the building sits on top of a portal to the other side. An interesting theory, considering the building's less than ideal history. Although today the area is a tourist hotspot, back in the 19th century, the ground where La Pavilion sits was deemed completely inhospitable and incredibly dangerous. It was the frequent spot for foul deeds and late night killings, which is likely why so many spirits reside in the hotel's 4 walls. Among the most talked about are a couple seen dressed in beautiful clothing roaming around with googly eyes. The couple will enter an elevator, but then it never goes anywhere. Instead, the usual ping sound rings loudly and the doors open up again, revealing no one inside. Many also claim to have witnessed a young woman on the 9th floor reported to have died on the steps of the hotel, but the truly terrifying entity only reveals herself at night. One guest staying on the most notoriously haunted 9th floor said that in the middle of the night he was woken by a woman dressed in all black sitting at the foot of his bed. He was speechless and terrified and went to scream, but the entity leaned in, ran her icy cold fingers through his hair and said, "You belong to me. I'll never let you go. Needless to say, he never returned, and I do not blame him. If I ever saw that lady in my room, I would be running as fast as I could.
Starting off this countdown, we have room 333. The Langham Hotel is said to be one of the most haunted hotels in London, as it is haunted by more than 5 ghosts. The most active ghost is said to be that of a German prince. It's believed that he threw himself out of a window on an upper story room and passed away. Guests have seen his ghost on a number of occasions. He is known to move through walls and close doors. If you feel a sudden drop in temperature, it's said that's a sign that he is near. You also have the ghost of a man with a gaping wound on his face. But the most haunted area in the whole hotel is room 333. People who have stayed in this room have encountered a number of terrifying ghosts. The first sighting was made by a BBC newscaster. He was staying in the room when he woke up to see a fluorescent ball of light floating above him, which slowly transformed into a human figure. The apparition hovered in his room, and he was dressed in Victorian evening wear, but one of his legs was missing. He came towards the newscaster with his arms open and eyes wide, before disappearing into thin air. Another ghost that haunts this room is the ghost of a doctor who took the life of his wife on their honeymoon. This guy often appears wearing a cloak and often has blank staring eyes. And lastly, we have Emperor Napoleon III. Apparently he lived at the Langham during his last days in exile. And he's also made an appearance in room 333. In our 9th spot, we have the Hay Adams. Located in Washington, D.C., this hotel is said to be the most famous hotel in the capital. That's because a number of big hotshots have stayed there, like Obama. But the hotel has a pretty haunting past. In 1884, John Hay, who was President Abraham Lincoln's private secretary, and Henry Adams built their homes on the plot of land where the hotel was built upon. In 1885, Adams' wife, Marion Hooper Adams, ended up taking her life there. She had been battling a case of serious depression, triggered by the death of her father 10 months earlier. In 1927, after Adams passed away, the houses were destroyed and replaced with the hotel. But it didn't matter, because Marion's soul is attached to the land that she died on, so she now haunts the hotel. Guests and staff members have frequently reported hearing the sounds of someone crying. They believe that it is Marion weeping over her heartbreak and loss of father. In our 8th spot, we have the Ballygolly Castle, and I just absolutely love the name of this place, so I had to put it on today's list. Like Ballygolly, Ballygally, I don't care, it's funny. Anyways, this was a castle built in 1625 Ireland. Now it has been transformed into a hotel. Turns out that years ago, the original owners, Lord James Shaw and his wife, Lady Isabella, lived in the castle. That was until Isabella's death. She either fell, jumped, or was pushed to her death from the top of the castle. To this day, her ghost still haunts her old home. She has been seen wandering around the castle, knocking on doors, and on multiple occasions can be heard weeping from her tower. Moving on to number 7, we have room 873. Located in the luxury mountain resort Banff Springs Hotel, room 873 is so haunted that they had to permanently seal it up, hoping that it would seal away the evil with it. According to a number of legends, decades ago a family was killed in room 873. In 1928, a married couple and their daughter checked into the hotel, but they never checked out. During one night, the father ended up taking the lives of his wife and daughter before taking his own life. No one knows why he did this. Soon after, the room was refurbished and booked out to visitors. But weird things started happening in that room. Guests would wake up in the middle of the night to sounds of screaming in their room. When they would flip on the lights, they would see bloody handprints on the mirror inside the room. Obviously, they would freak the hell out and run to the front desk, but when the staff went to the room to investigate the prints, they would be gone. It was happening so frequently that they decided to board up the room. In fact, if you go to the hotel today, there are rooms ending in 73 on each floor, except on the 8th floor. In the spot where it should be, you can tell that a room has been boarded up. In our 6th spot today, we have Lizzie Borden House. Turns out that the infamous Lizzie Borden House, where she allegedly killed her parents, is now a fun little bed and breakfast. But a haunted fun little bed and breakfast. So story goes that back in 1892, both of Lizzie's parents were found dead. After investigating the scene, Lizzie was the only person who seemed guilty, so she was blamed for their murder. While staying there, guests have reported seeing doors open and close on their own. Also, late at night, apparently Lizzie can be heard laughing at the top of the stairs. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Omni Grove Park Inn. Back in the 1920s, while staying at the Omni Grove Park Inn in North Carolina, a young woman was either pushed or jumped to her death from her hotel room 545. To this day, her presence still wanders the walls of the hotel. Some guests have felt her presence, others have seen a strange pink mist form around them, and some have actually seen this ghostly woman herself. She appears in a flowy pink gown, hence why people just call her the Pink Lady. The people most sensitive to seeing her are young children. A number of children have seen her and been like, "Mommy, who's that lady in the pink dress?" Meanwhile, no one's there. How freaky. Coming in at number 4, we have the Ostasaga Resort. Located in New York, this resort has quite the fair share of history. When it was first erected, it was actually a school for girls, and to this day, these little girlies still haunt the area. Apparently, while on the 3rd floor hallway, you'll be able to hear a bunch of them giggling and whispering. In fact, Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters went to investigate this place a couple years ago, and when doing so, they captured the presence of a bunch of shadowy figures, ghostly whisperings, and other paranormal activity. If you want to check out the place today, go to the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th floors. That's where all the spooky stuff is said to happen. In our 3rd spot today, we have La Posada de Santa Fe. This resort and spa hotel is anything but relaxing. Turns out that it is haunted by a German woman named Julia Stab. Oh my god, her last name is Stab. It's probably like Stob. It definitely is because it's German, but anyway, it makes it spookier. Before it was a resort, it was her mansion. It was built by her husband in 1882. A couple of years later, Julia fell into a really bad depression. Her 8th child ended up passing away shortly after birth, and so Julia locked herself in her room. She didn't leave her room until 1896. When she passed away, her soul latched onto the house. To this day, she still wanders around the halls. Most frequently, she will appear in Suite 100. It's now a guest suite, but it used to be her bedroom. In fact, Julia loved to take baths, so people staying in the suite often hear the water running in the middle of the night. Moving on to number 2, we have the Fairmount Royal York Hotel. Turns out that there's a haunted hotel in my hometown and I didn't even know it. Toronto's Royal York Hotel is nearly 100 years old. Construction of it finished in 1929, and over the years a number of members of royalty, celebrities, and millionaires and ghosts have stayed at this hotel. Seems to be a nice luxury hotel, minus the fact that it's completely haunted. One famous ghost is the man dressed in a purple coat that wanders around the 8th floor. There's also ghosts of children haunting the halls. One guest told the concierge that they heard children running up and down the halls on the first night that they checked in, but they saw no children. When they looked through the peephole the next night, they saw a gray-haired man with a purple waistcoat. They initially thought that it was a hotel staff member, but when they opened the door, the man disappeared into thin air. The hotel also has a crystal ballroom that is also haunted. Guests frequently hear noises and music within the ballroom, even after it's been closed. And in our number 1 spot today, we have room B340. Queen Mary Hotel is said to be one of the most haunted hotels in America. There are a number of ghosts that haunt this hotel, from Jackie, the little girl who haunts the first-class pool, to a man named John Petter who was crushed by a watertight door, to 2nd Senior Officer William Eric Stark, who accidentally drank cleaning fluid instead of gin, and one of the cooks who was baked alive by his own staff during World War II. So yeah, a lot of dark things have happened on this ship turned hotel. Now there is one room that you never ever want to visit, and that's room B340. It's the site of a huge tragedy. So back in the 60s, the ship was used for transatlantic cruises. Well, while on this cruise, a man went crazy and took the lives of 2 women in this room. When his crimes were discovered, he was locked in the room until they could dock the ship and deal with him. The door was locked from the outside, and a guard was positioned outside the room so the killer couldn't escape. At one point, the guard heard the man pounding on the door, saying that someone was in the room with him and was trying to kill him. Obviously, the guard was like, "I ain't no idiot, I'm not falling for that," so he never opened the door. He thought this guy was just trying to get him to open the door so he could escape. Here's where it gets weird. Shortly after, the guard heard nothing coming from the room, so he thought the man finally settled down and went to bed. The next day, the ship arrived in New York and the NYPD boarded the ship to arrest this man. But when he opened the door, they found the man's body parts scattered across the room. His limbs had been ripped off and were all over the place. There's no way that he could have done this to himself. So what happened in there? Was there actually someone in that room with him? If so, how did they get in and then out? A number of guests who have stayed in that room have reported eerie things happening to them in the middle of the night, like flickering lights, knocking, apparitions, and the water turning on and off by itself.
Kicking off the countdown at the number 10, we have the room at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. The glamorous hotel opened in 1927 right at the center of Hollywood and has a long history of celebrities staying there. It is often used for movie premiere after parties and even hosted the very first Oscars. It's a huge spot for tourists, but one room in particular is known to be haunted. Room 1200. People have reported seeing the legendary star Marilyn Monroe walk through the halls of that room. Well, the hall's the room, you know, the whole living situation. She was staying there during her rise to fame. It's been said that she shot her first ever ad at the Roosevelt pool, and she still hangs around the pool to this day. Many guests said they have seen her in the room's mirror, and maintenance workers said they've seen her blue dress moving through the halls. If you're gonna be haunted by a ghost, it might as well be Marilyn Monroe, am I right? Up next at number 9 is the Red Lion Inn, located in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. The inn has been around since 1773, and throughout the years it has been a favorite spot for paranormal investigators and mediums. The hotel is filled with a haunting past, and reports say that the 4th floor has a lot of sightings. The ghost of a young girl carrying flowers and a man with a top hat are the two most frequent sightings, but one room in particular has the most activity. It's on the 3rd floor and it's room 301. A guest reported that they woke up feeling like someone was standing over their bed and heard unexplained knocks and voices throughout their stay. Snagging the number 8 spot on our countdown is the Queen Anne in San Francisco. The Now Hotel was once a school for girls back in 1890, run by the headmistress named Miss Mary Lake. Over the years, the school converted to a hotel, and it's been said that Miss Mary Lake will look after the guests who stay in her former office, room 410. She's not a ghost that will terrorize people like in horror movies. She looks after her guests, like she once did with her students many generations ago. Guests have reported that their clothes were unpacked when they came back to the rooms, and they woke up in the middle of the night to find out that their blankets had been neatly tucked underneath them. I can't tell if this is creepy or comforting. I kind of like the idea of a ghost nanny who just like takes care of you. Like, creepy nanny, please tuck me in. I don't know why I was Italian for that. Cruising into the number 7 spot is the Omni Groove Park in Asheville, North Carolina. Back in the 1920s, news broke that a woman either jumped or got pushed to her death from the 5th floor balcony. A century later, employees and guests say that the room she was in, room 545, is still haunted by her presence. Her case was never solved, which might be part of the reason why she still makes herself known. They refer to her as the Lady in Pink because she is often seen in a pink dress or leaves behind a pink mist. Apparently, young children are the ones who spot her the most, so if you really want to catch a glimpse of her, grab your kids and make them do the work. Be like, hey Johnny, find this ghost for me. Yeah, ghost finding kid. Put them on a leash like they're a ghost town and they just like crawl around like is that the noise that kids make? I don't know what noise kids make. In at the number 6 is the Malaga Inn, located in Mobile, Alabama. It's considered one of the most haunted hotels in Alabama and still has the boutique style that it did when it was built in 1862. The property is historic in the Deep South and is still a memory of the Civil War era. It has 39 rooms, Victorian furnishings and decor, and a beautiful outdoor courtyard. When it was built, the 2 townhouses were constructed by 2 in-laws as wedding gifts for their 2 sisters in the family. Guests claim that the sisters never left the home and that they often spot a ghostly lady figure in a white dress in room 007. She was recently spotted pacing on the balcony. Other guest reports say that their lights turn on and off by themselves, furniture moves on its own, and even a swinging chandelier. The only time a swinging chandelier is cool is when you're swinging from it with a bottle of champagne in one hand, you're like popping it and blowing at everyone, you're like, I'm rich, you can do whatever I want. That's when it's cool. We're halfway through at number 5 and we have La Posada, which is located in Santa Fe. It's known for being a hotel now, but before it was renovated, it was actually the home of a German lady named Julia Stab. The mansion was built for her by her husband in 1882, and after her 8th child died shortly after birth, she fell into a deep depression. Reports say she hid in her room, was never seen in the flesh again after 1896, her death becoming a huge mystery. So now that it's a hotel, guests have said they've seen her staying in room 100, which was her former bedroom. It can be a haunting experience experience if you decide to stay there. It's been said that Julia used to love baths, and guests staying in room 100 would hear running water in the middle of the night and their water would turn on and off on its own. Alright guys, we're at number 4 with the Concorde's Colonial Inn. If you walk down the hallways of this hotel, you might feel a chill running up your spine because it's known for being historically haunted by its past. It was built in Concord, Massachusetts back in the Revolutionary War. One of the rooms in the hotel is known for being haunted, room 24, because it was used as an operation room for wounded soldiers back in the 1770s. Caretakers operated on the wounded soldiers and many of them didn't survive and passed away in that very room. Many guests have dared to spend the night there and they say they see floating orbs, hear haunting voices, and even saw the ghost of a nurse walking around the room. Would you guys like to stay in this room? For me, that's a no. In our third spot is the Battery Carriage Inn. The hotel in Charleston, South Carolina is known for being the most romantic bed and breakfast, but also the most haunted. How do those two blend together? I'm not exactly sure. The hotel is said to have been haunted for many years and the website openly brags about it. Apparently there are 3 rooms in the hotel that are haunted. Room 3, room 8, and room 10. Room 10 is known for a headless torso, room 3 has a variety of different ghost sightings, and room 8 always has a man apparition. The hotel was built in the 1840s and still lives on as one of the most popular tourist spots to this day. Taking over the number 2 spot is the Crescent Hotel and Spa. The Arkansas Hotel has been given the title for being America's most haunted hotel, with claims that it has a portal to the other side, if you know what I mean. It opens up a door to the dead. Over the years, many guests have reported ghost sightings and paranormal activity, a fact that is known by the 2 owners who bought it back in 1997. They ended up hiring certified mediums to do a reading on the building, and they found out that the hotel was a portal to the other side, a dimension that holds the spirits of the dead. But why this hotel? Because it was once a hospital back in 1937, when a doctor named Norman Baker treated cancer patients despite his lack of training. As a result, many of the people died, and apparently you can stay in the room that was once a morgue if you want to have the worst night of your life. Winning the number 1 spot on our list is the Stanley Hotel. It is number 1 because it is the most spirit hotel in America, and it was the inspiration for the Stephen King movie The Shining after the famous author stayed there for one night. It was built back in 1909, but to this day guests report that they see spirits and hear untraceable piano music, and they also hear manic laughs and empty spaces, and it's been said that the spirits are all employees and guests who were once at the hotel from many years ago. Room 217 is known for being the most haunted, and it's the one that Stephen King and his wife stayed in back in 1974, which inspired the novel which made the iconic movie many years later.
Coming at number 10 now, we have the Shadow Men. This one comes from Reddit user Mithrin. He said he used to work in his aunt and uncle's hotel in a Scottish village. One night while sleeping in the staff quarters, he was woken up from a loud banging noise in the corridor. He angrily got up, ready to tell people to shut up so he'd get back to sleep, but the corridor was empty. He walked to the end of the corridor to see if there was anything coming up the stairs from below, and that's when he saw it. He said a figure was stomping up the stairs. He said it looked like a shadow person, but solid. There were no features on the face or clothes on its body. It looked like someone wearing a black morph suit if you could see right through them. He ran back to his room terrified and could hear the banging for hours. The next morning, nobody else in the hotel said they heard anything, and he kept the secret of the Shadow Man to himself. Moving on to number 9 now, we have children's clothes. This one comes from Reddit user Loco Mojo. They said that one night when they were working in a hotel, a man came down to the lobby area and began wandering around. He was acting very strange. He was talking to himself as he sat down at a breakfast table before standing up and switching chairs around the table every few minutes. When they asked if he needed help, he would just jerk a little bit and mumble that he didn't need anything. After a few hours of this, he went back to his room and then returned to say he had turned the heater on, which had left him short of breath, and he needed an ambulance. Then the fire alarms went off. When the fire crew came back down from the room, they kept asking if the man was alone. They said, yes, he came here alone, he's staying there alone. After the fire crew left, they went to go and look in the man's room. The sight shocked them. He had rearranged all of the furniture, put the TV in the bathroom, and had put his trash can in the middle of the room on the bed and had set it on fire. Perhaps the most disturbing thing of all was that even though he said he was alone, there were small children's clothes spread all over the room. Coming at number 8 now, we have the elevator. This is a short but scary one that I think everyone can appreciate. It comes from Reddit user user The Dino Man Show. They said that one night they visited a hotel and needed to use the elevator. They got in, they went up to the 4th floor and the doors opened. There stood a group of people waiting for the elevator, but they made no attempt to get in, even though he was the only one in there. After a few seconds, the automatic doors closed, and just before they closed, when there was only a slight crack left, he heard one of the people outside say, "Why is the lift so full of people?" That's the point where I would just start mashing the open doors button. At number 7 now we have the woman in grey. This one comes from Reddit user Army of Wombles. He said that he once worked as a waiter in an old hotel in Scotland. They were expecting special guests, 2 old women who were friends of the owner, although as a fairly new waiter himself, he hadn't met them yet. Another waiter mentioned they had arrived and told him to go and put some wine in their room as they were being helped out of the car. So he picked a bottle up, he opened it, he got 2 glasses and a tray and went over to the room. On the way he heard some shuffling. He'd been told the stories about how the place was haunted by the ghost of a woman in grey who had hung herself. Then as he turned the corner, right in front of him, he saw a woman in very old-fashioned clothes walking away from him with no head. What? Now it turns out that it was actually one of the 2 old women who was arriving as a guest. She had osteoporosis, which caused her head to be below her shoulders. Still a terrifying sight nonetheless. Coming at number 6 now we have the footprints. This one is really mysterious. It comes from Reddit user Fluxy Wild. They said they were working in a motel when they were about 17 or 18. They were at the front desk but was asked by the housekeeping guy to come up and check something out in one of the rooms that was being cleaned. He got up there to see the housekeeping guy standing in the middle of the room just pointing at the ceiling. There was a set of bare footprints on the ceiling which was at least 10 feet high. Not a shoe print, a bare footprint. It was only in the middle of the ceiling too. They figured there was no way someone could just jump 10 feet upside down. There was also a single bullet left on the bed. What's going on with that story? Do we even want to know? Moving on to number 5 now, we have the cold bathroom. This one comes from Reddit user Scumbag760. Nice name. He used to work in security at a hotel in California. Every night he got a sheet showing which rooms were empty that night. It was his job to go through all the rooms and make sure the lights were off and the windows were secure. One night he went into a room and found all of the lights were on. He began to turn them off. After turning the bathroom light off, he noticed the room was freezing cold. He reached into the bathroom to turn the thermostat up when suddenly the door slammed. He ran out of the room and tried to close the door behind him, but the deadbolt pushed itself out of the lock and slammed into the door frame. When he came back, the door was shut. He moved it around to see if it would close, but it wouldn't. He even tried slamming the door himself, but it was too light to even shut because it caught a lot of air. He said that was the last night he ever went into that room. At number 4 now we have the dragging. This one comes from Reddit user Blue Pig. He was staying in a hotel one night while traveling for work. It was one that he had used quite a lot before. Nothing strange had ever really happened. One day he crashed into bed exhausted and tried to get some sleep as he had to be up quite early in the morning. He couldn't seem to sleep though. There was just this noise, a constant shuffling sound coming from above. It sounded like someone was dragging a table or a chair across the floor, almost as if they were rearranging furniture. This continued almost constantly for 2 hours. He called the front desk to complain. They sent someone to the room above to check, but there was nobody there. The room was totally empty. When he tried to get back to sleep a little while later, the noise just started again. How creepy is that? Anyone got a good theory? Coming at number 3 now, we have the partier. This one comes from Reddit where a guy said he used to work front desk at a Marriott hotel. One night during the winter season, the whole hotel was booked out by a high school who were going on ski trips to nearby resorts. It was party central, apparently, total chaos. He said people would ride furniture down the water slide, punch holes in the wall to connect their rooms, and cut open their mattresses to hide drugs and alcohol. One night a male student overdosed and was found in the hallway. He was unconscious on the floor when the paramedics arrived. He had no pulse and had to be defibrillated back to life. He was taken to the hospital for a few hours but was somehow allowed to leave and return to the party where he shouted, "Who's ready for shots?" and then just continued to party. He literally died and then returned to a hotel party. Next up at number 2 now, we have the clone. This is a very creepy one. It comes from Reddit user Infinity Girl. She told a story about her friends that she refers to as E and M. I'm going to call them Ellen and Mary for this story. Ellen was her college roommate who worked as the night manager for a newly built hotel. She brought Ellen coffee one night like normal, but found her sitting at the front desk shaking her head in confusion. Ellen said she had just checked in what she could only describe as the doppelganger of their other roommate, Mary. Ellen said she was exactly like Mary and that she tried to show her a picture of Mary on her phone. This woman wasn't even interested. They put it down to coincidence and just sat and drank their coffee. At 2:30 a.m. she pulled into a garage and looked at her phone to see a series of texts from Ellen to her and Mary at 2:17 saying, "Stop, not funny, you guys suck, and what the hell." She was confused and so she called her back. Ellen sounded hysterical on the phone and said that she saw her and Mary wearing the exact same clothes as earlier, standing in the main hallway of the hotel, just staring at her. Ellen told them to stop joking around. The front desk phone rang, and by the time she had turned to answer it, they had gone. Ellen eventually calmed down and said she didn't tell her the freakiest part of the story. When she got home that night, the kitchen clock was stuck at 2:17 a.m. and right next to it was a picture of her and Mary smiling that she had developed earlier that afternoon. Can you explain these creepy clones? Perhaps it's a glitch in the Matrix? Perhaps we will never know. And finally, number 1 now, we have room number 8. This one comes from Reddit user Vicerine. She said that before she was born, her parents decided to move out to the coast and open a nice hotel. Before they opened for guests, her mum and dad decided to clean all of the rooms. One day her mum was in room number 8 by herself doing some vacuuming when the whole carpet just started rippling, shall we say. And I don't just mean colours or patterns. Her mum said the entire carpet rippled in a constant fluid wave type motion, lifting all of the furniture and herself up and down off the floor for about 10 seconds. Her dad came running in when he heard the screams. Her mum said they were selling before the place even opened, but her dad managed to convince her otherwise. She refused to ever step into room 8 ever again though.
Starting off at number 10 is the Stone Line Inn in Oklahoma. This inn was originally built as a Victorian mansion in 1907 for F.E. Houghton, but it was also used as a funeral home for an 8-year period when the Houghton family struggled financially. The embalming table from that time is still on display at what is now a bed and breakfast. Possibly as a result of the death that was within it previously, guests have reported strange noises throughout the house. Guests also say they have seen the daughter Augusta, who died in the house from whooping cough, and F.E. Houghton himself smoking a pipe. But we got more ghosts coming for you at number 9, Hotel Europe in Vancouver. Now this building was completed in 1909 to be the prominent hotel in town, and it was, up until Hotel Vancouver opened up in 1916. After it lost the majority of the favorable clientele, the hotel fell into disrepute and into a brothel. It eventually became a heritage building with a storefront on the main level though. So over this time, the areaways underground were filled up. These were paths underground that connected to the sidewalk so that freight could be loaded into the cellars in the basement. During the construction, one of the times the Hotel Europe changed, a contractor had a frightening experience. Apparently, he was working by himself on some repairs in the cellar, close up to a bricked up areaway door. The contractor left the cellar briefly just to fetch something, and when he returned, his tools were just scattered all around the floor. He then heard scratching noises coming from behind the brick wall and felt a bad presence. Scared and confused, he quickly gathered up his tools and left the cellar as fast as he could. After that, he flat out refused to work there again. Sometimes scratching noises can be heard coming from the other side of the bricked up areaway, and some people dispute, yeah, it could be mice. But you have to remember, the areaways were completely filled in, bricks and concrete. Later on, after all this, the owner of a poster store on the main floor of the building saw a figure in a black coat and flat cap in her store after closing the store on security camera. When she went to check on the possible lost customer, when she swore no one was there when she closed it, he was gone. She was rightly so shaken and closed up the store quickly that night, not sure if she was seeing things. But let's move on to number 8, the Crescent Hotel, the hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. So this used to be one of the most luxurious resorts when it opened in 1886. But tough economic times hurt the Crescent Hotel and it closed in the 1930s. In 1937, Norman Baker opened its doors once again and turned it into Baker's Cancer Curing Hospital, as a man without a medical degree. It was discovered that this fraud physician was indeed running a scam. Today, the hospital has returned to its former luxurious glory, but some spirits from the past still lurk around.
Some spirits included are some of Baker's old patients, including a commonly spotted Theodora. She is most often spotted fumbling her keys outside room 419. Another spirit seen around the property is a man who helped build it, Michael, an Irish stonemason who fell to his death. If you happen to stay there, they have nightly ghost tours that end at the morgue, a morgue that still remains intact from its time as a hospital, and it is said to be a hotbed of paranormal activity. At number 7, Banff Springs Hotel, Alberta. So the Fairmont Banff Springs was actually one of the first railway hotels built in the 19th century by the Canadian Pacific Railway. It was built as a part of the aim to attract travelers westward. So the hotel denies that it is haunted, but that doesn't stop the guests who stay there from sharing the encounters that they have had. The long-standing story is that in 1932 there was a bride who died while falling down one of the hotel's grand stone staircases. Guests say they have seen her still in her wedding dress dancing alone in the Cascade Ballroom. Another hotel the Canadian Pacific Railway built is our number 6, the Royal York Hotel. So this one was opened in 1929 right across from the Union Station in Toronto. At the time, and to this day, it's one of Toronto's most grand hotels, like even the Queen has stayed there. But just like the Banff Springs Hotel, it is home to its fair share of ghost stories. People talk about hearing the sounds of children running up and down the halls, but once they check to see who is making all that noise, the hallway falls silent. It's not just some tricksters running around. Also, people underneath the now closed off Crystal Ballroom report hearing voices and music coming from the vacant space. One guest even wrote on a Toronto blog that some chandeliers on the floor below it were trembling and the ceiling shook. So maybe some fancy ghosts took up residence after the ballroom was closed off permanently due to building and fire code violations. You know, our loss is some fancy ghost gain. At number 5, the Story Inn. This inn was built in 1851 in Indiana, and it truly does house quite the story. It is the only structure still left in a mining town called Story that was left inoperative after the Great Depression. It was restored and revitalized in the 1960s as a bed and breakfast, and it does have a frequent spectral guest, the Blue Lady. In the inn's guest books, there were records of a ghost called the Blue Lady who is believed to be the wife of the town's original founder, Dr. George Story. The guests of the inn record that her eyes are a hypnotic blue and she smells like cherry tobacco. To summon her, those who stay turn on the blue light beside the bed in what used to be her own room. Today, it's called the Blue Lady Room. So if she's feeling particularly nice, she will even leave behind blue items in that room if you are there to stay. At number 4, we have Mount Washington Hotel. Back in 1902, a businessman named Joseph Stickney built the hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. The following year after completion, unfortunately, he passed away. It is believed that his widowed wife Carolyn now haunts the halls of the hotel, reliving the moments they had together. Hotel staff have reportedly spotted her descending the stairs for dinner and have also noticed lights inexplicably turning on and off in one of the towers. Sometimes she has been spotted standing on the balcony looking off into the distance, lost in thought. Her 4-poster maple bed is still in room 314 and has become well known as the best place to see her. Guests have reported waking up to find a woman sitting at the end of their bed, slowly brushing her hair. I wonder if she's staring at them or off in the distance, because one of them is much creepier than the other. At number 3, La Fonda on the Plaza Santa Fe. While the structure of La Fonda was built in 1922, records say it's on the site of the city's first hotel dating all the way back to the early 17th century. So the New Mexico Hotel was a favored place for travelers headed west, and is home to a couple of guests that have passed on and refused to leave. The first ghost is the former Chief Justice of the Territorial Supreme Court, John P. Slough. He was shot to death in the hotel lobby and his spirit is said to have never left. The second specter seen is a distraught salesman. The man apparently jumped into the hotel well after gambling and losing on a bad hand. He has been seen emerging from the hotel fountain. Which I have to say, if you're gambling and you lose a bad hand, 1, don't gamble, maybe, and 2, only have good hands, that's what I do. Number 2, the Prince of Wales Hotel, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario, Canada. This hotel was built in 1864 and went through a few other names before becoming the Prince of Wales Hotel in 1901. It was expanded in the 70s to add additional wings on either side, but the new additions blend in, so the original architecture looks the same. Also, tourists can't really notice. So even with all the changes to the hotel, the resident ghost has not been deterred. She already spent so much time there. 200 years. So Molly Maguire was in a wooden house where the hotel is today when Americans laid siege on the town. An American soldier was tasked with searching the house and found a dark figure looking out the window. Thinking it was a British soldier, he ran the figure through with his bayonet. But it was Molly. The soldier ran off, telling no one of his mistake of killing an innocent woman. Today, the spirit of Molly is said to haunt room 207, the approximate location of Molly's bedroom. People report waking up to footsteps echoing in their dark and empty room and random lights being on when they swear they turn them off. One guest even checked out because all the haunted happenings were just too much for them. Number 1. The Red Lion Inn in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. So all the way back in 1773, a small tavern was established on the corner that would eventually house the Red Lion Inn. In 1896, while it was known as the Stockbridge House, the entire property burned down in a fire. It was rebuilt and opened the next year, then continued to change ownership and names throughout the years. With all of that history, the inn is said to have quite a bit of spiritual activity. Guests often see figures, including a young girl carrying flowers or a man in a top hat on the premises. But room 301 is the room to go if you really want a creepy encounter. One man recorded his experience on TripAdvisor. In the middle of the night, on 3 different occasions, I woke up feeling my toes being tugged on and someone scratching my hand. I also felt as if someone or something was under the covers with me at one point. Then, at 9 AM in the morning, I woke up when I heard the maid knocking at the door. She opened the room with the key, walked in, and headed for the bathroom. I heard the footsteps come out of the bathroom and stop by the bed. Then it suddenly felt as though someone was fluffing up the comforter as if trying to make up the bed on the left-hand side. As hard as I tried, I could not move and I could not speak. When I looked up, I realized that I was in the room alone and no one had been there. If I was that guy, I would check out of that place immediately, but he was there for a business conference and had to deal with it.
Coming into number 10, we have the Stanley Hotel. So the Stanley Hotel was the place that inspired Stephen King to write one of the most horrifying novels turned horrifying films of all time. The resort is in Colorado and built into the Rocky Mountains. The building has a rich history of paranormal goings-on across the entire hotel, but in particular the 4th floor. The most haunted room is supposed to be room 217. This is the room where King stayed the night and was also said to have once been the site of an unfortunate explosion. This is what Stephen King said about the stay that inspired what is arguably his most famous novel. He said, "I dreamt of my 3-year-old son running through the corridors, looking back over his shoulder, eyes wide, screaming. He was being chased by a fire hose. I woke up with a tremendous jerk, sweating all over, within an inch of falling out of bed. I got up, I lit a cigarette, I sat in the chair looking out of the window at the Rockies, and by the time the cigarette was done, I had the bones of my book firmly set in my mind." Stephen King for King, I love him. Also, I will say, staff who frequent the concert hall at the hotel at night report hearing the whispered words, "Get out," which would deeply freak me out. Coming into number 9, we have the Taj Mahal Palace. Located in India, although not actually in the famous Taj Mahal, this hotel has a woeful backstory. Despite the Mumbai hotel being grand and beautiful, it is said that the French architect W.A. Chambers accidentally built it backwards and was so distraught that he ended up committing suicide by jumping from the 5th floor. Now, according to a lot of first-hand reports from staff at the lavish hotel, the architect still roams the halls at night. The hotel was also the site of a terror attack in 2008. At this point, the hotel was seized and 31 people were killed there. The hotel was back up and running soon after as a symbol of strength and resilience, but the memory of the attacks live on. Coming into number 8, we have the Drovers Inn. Ah, Scotland. I dream of you always. I would stay anywhere in Scotland, even here. The Drovers Inn is located in Invernanan in Loch Lomond. The Drovers Inn dates back to the 1700s, a time when things were really kicking off in Scotland. The inn is the best kind of hotel because it's also a pub with just a small number of rooms, so you can get nice and cozy with those ghosts, of which there are many. Room 6 is said to be plagued by mysterious orb lights. A ghostly child appears in a pink dress on the staircase, and room 115 is haunted by a voyeur. It seems that a couple stayed in the room one night and were awoken by strange flashes. Thinking nothing of it, they went back to sleep. The next morning, when they were packing up, they found their camera out of place. Weird. They didn't think too much of it until later when they went through the pictures and there were some creepy images of the couple sleeping. The pair were freaked out as the room was locked from the inside when they went to bed, but nonetheless they called the inn to report the goings on. Now the inn responded and said that no staff would have had access to the room, and even if they had, they couldn't enter if it was locked from the inside. Creepy, although I'd still stay there just to be in Scotland. I love Scotland. Coming into number 7, we have Hotel Galvez. I have always wanted to go to Texas. I've never been, but I'm super keen, although honestly I'm keen to go everywhere and anywhere. But still, Texas is high up. Anyway, Hotel Galvez is located in Galveston Island on the Gulf of Mexico and was built in 1911. Over 100 years later, and the Queen of the Gulf is drawing in visitors, although it seems that some guests have never left. Rather than giving you a whole spiel like I usually would, I'm just gonna read you a TripAdvisor review from a spooked guest. Here goes. The hotel is so full of history and the interior is very beautiful. I didn't realise that the Galvez was known for its ghostly visitors, nor was I a believer, until now. My friend and I were walking the Galvez and my friend was calling out to Audra, a woman who hung herself in the hotel in the 1950s. Her room was 501 and we were staying a few rooms down. Anyway, we go to sleep that night and at around 5 AM I woke up and my hotel door is open and the latch is still on and I'm thinking, oh my god. We were intoxicated, so I guess we just left the door open. So I close the door and I go back to bed and I wake up at around 8 AM and I tell my friend that we left the door open last night. Then I get out of bed and walk over to the door to show her how far it was, and to my amazement, the door kept closing all the way. It just wouldn't stay open. It's spring-loaded, so I was confused. Anyway, that's my story of the Galvez. Blimey, this is what happens when you call upon spirits, I'm just saying. Coming into number 6, we have Murder Castle. What do you mean you don't want to stay at Murder Castle? Sounds lovely. So actually you can't, thankfully, stay here anymore. It's been torn down. H.H. Holmes's murder mansion has been demolished, but the site is now the Englewood Post Office. So I read The Devil in White City earlier this year before a trip to Chicago, and honestly it was really terrifying. H.H. Holmes was a real man who built a hotel in Englewood, Chicago in order to kill people. He booby-trapped the place so that guests couldn't escape their rooms, and he would often knock them unconscious using hidden gas valves. Many of the hotel's rooms were outfitted with chutes that would drop bodies into the basement, where Holmes would then dissolve them in acid to rid himself of the evidence. The infamous serial killer confessed to killing 27 people at the property, which housed tourists visiting the Chicago World Fair. It is actually anticipated that he killed a lot more than that. As many as 200 people were thought to have lost their lives in the building. Coming into number 5, we have the Russell Hotel. If you hear a creak in the night at the Russell Hotel in Sydney, chances are there's a ghoul on the loose or lurking in the shadows. The Russell Hotel is no stranger to mysterious midnight moans and groans, but the most enduring legend is of a spirit of a sailor who roams the hotel, but most often causes trouble in room 8. Guests have seen him lurking over their bed, staring at them in the night. That's a no from me, sir. Back on your ship. Okay, but despite the ghosts and everything, you should actually stay here because it's one of the nicest and most beautiful places I've ever been in the world. Coming into number 4, we have Fairmont Banff Springs. I went to the Fairmont Banff Springs earlier this year and it was absolutely breathtaking. The building dates back to 1888 and was a Grand Railway hotel. The building is a National Historic Site of Canada, but it is teeming with ghosts and ghouls. It is said that a secret room was constructed during the original build, which was only discovered when a fire broke out in 1926. Speaking of fire, some say a burning bride haunts the sweeping ballroom. The story goes that as she walked down a staircase lined with candles, her dress caught fire. In a panic, she tripped and fell, dying from a broken neck. Some say that her spirit haunts both the bridal suite and the ballroom, where she can be seen dancing with flames licking her dress. Also reported it's the spectre of a bellman who haunts the 9th floor, and an apparition of a bartender, and, get this, a headless bagpipe player. How that works? I mean, you go figure. The real deal here though is room 837. Legend has it that this is the room that a grisly murder took place in, and that guests who stay here are awoken in the middle of the night by screaming. Bloody handprints have also been spotted on the room's mirror. On the upside though, I will once again reiterate that this is one of the nicest hotels in the world and it's absolutely stunning, and there's a beautiful lobby dog called Bear. Coming into number 3, we have the Langham. The Langham is a beautiful and very fancy hotel in London. Shout out to my former hometown. The luxury 5-star rooms come with a hefty price tag and some extra ghouls. The hotel opened in 1865 and was said to have been the suicide spot of a German prince who jumped from the 4th floor. He can still be seen at the window he once fell from. A doctor involved in a murder-suicide can also be found pacing the halls, and none other than Emperor Napoleon III still haunts the basement. Room 333 is said to be the most haunted of them all, with many a spectre wanting a sleepover. The most famous ghost, inclusive to room 333, is a man in Victorian dress who likes to watch people sleeping. Whether or not it's he who shakes the bed violently at night, we don't know. Damn, I forgot to tell you about the ghost with the gaping wound on its face. Next time. Coming into number 2, we have the stay on Main. There are 16 very good reasons not to stay at this cursed hotel in Los Angeles. Oh, and also don't let the new name fool you. This is the legendary cursed Cecil Hotel, most recently in the news because of the disappearance of Alyssa Lamb in 2013. The Canadian tourist was found dead in the hotel's water tank surrounded by her belongings after going missing for 3 weeks. CCTV footage was released of her acting very strangely in an elevator before her mysterious and to this day unsolved death. It literally looks like she's pleading with someone invisible, which freaks me out. Before her death, the hotel was already wrapped up in 16 other grisly untimely deaths. It's actually thought that the Black Dahlia, a murdered rising Hollywood star, stayed at the hotel before her death. Oh, and it was also said to be the home of serial killers Richard Ramirez and Jack Unterweger. I feel like it just needs to be knocked down and the grounds cleansed with holy water or something. Finally, coming into number 1, you've all heard of Egyptian curses, but we're a little far from Egypt here. We've got the Luxor Hotel. Las Vegas is a place for tortured souls, so it's kind of understandable that so many hotels on the Strip are reported to be haunted. I could legitimately make a whole top 10 list about hotels not to stay at in Vegas, but for this list I'm just keeping it to the one. Luxor Hotel is an Egyptian themed hotel, but it may have angered the old gods. Many people think that it's cursed. Why? Well, attention to detail was actually lacking when the hotel was built. The Sphinx in the hotel is facing east rather than west, and the building of the pyramid doesn't have the required eye on the top, which is just utter disrespect, right? The Luxor has had very consistently high death rates over the years since it opened in 1993, and a string of misfortune that's also surrounded it. Some people say that 7 people died whilst building the hotel. In 1996, a woman jumped from the 26th floor of the building and now haunts the lobby. Another man died while he drunkenly fell from the 10th floor. A hand bomb went off in the parking garage in 2007, killing an employee. In 2010, a UNLV football player dropped dead following a fight, and in 2012, a casino employee was murdered by her boyfriend, once again in the lobby. 2012 was also a bad year for the hotel's rep, as 3 guests caught Legionnaire's disease, with a further case reported in 2017. One of the guests even died as a result. Guests have spotted ghost riders in the boats along the replica River Nile. And in case that wasn't enough, it is thought that the Titanic exhibition at the hotel also invited ghosts from the cruise ship disaster too. Whew, I don't know how many I counted there, but that is a lot. And I think ultimately the lesson to be learned here is don't face your Sphinx the wrong way because, I don't know, the gods will come for you, probably.